Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and what's next. It's a show that asks questions and peels back the layers of our average everyday experience and goes beyond scratching the surface. We interview people doing incredible things who are making a difference around the globe. Join me as we listen in and get one step closer to understanding that big ideas shared create collaboration. Collaboration can inspire community, and communities create social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So my next two guests and I had an excellent time talking about their new film, Fanny, The Right to Rock. Its world premiere is going to be happening at Hot Docs. You're going to want to check it out. You're also going to want to stay tuned for the conversation. I'm hoping that's why you're here. But June Millington and Bobby Jo Hart, filmmaker, producer, director, and I had, like I said, we just had a wonderful time together talking about this piece of history that is just so important for us to know about for so many reasons. We talk about role models. June brings that up, and she talks about how back in the 60s and the 70s, there weren't role models out there for an all-woman rock band, and so they became the role models. And you're going to want to hear why she talks about that, and you're going to want to hear why David Bowie has said, quote, "One of the most important bands in American rock has been buried without a trace," close quote. We talk about exclusion and prejudice. We talk about why it was so important that Fanny, this band, were self-formed and self-taught. And I just think there's a lot of reasons why that's important. Maybe you're going to have to not only listen to the conversation, but watch the film to find out more why that is the case. We talk about music as liberation and why it's the home plate for June and for the band. We talk about women in safe places. We talk about racism and sexism, and sadly how pervasive it was, and frankly pernicious at that time, and still in so many places. And we talk about dreaming and why it's so important for young women to dream and to continue dreaming. We talk about those thoughts and those dreams and those successes as being coming right up, and that might not even make any sense to you, but you'll figure it out once June starts talking a little bit more about that inner compass that we all have, and how courage is so important, and why and how and when June disappeared into the music. So hopefully I've captured your attention, and you're going to want to listen. You're going to want to lean in. So much going on here, way more going on than meets the eye. And just to put a period on that statement, you know, the film, Bobby Jo Hart, this whole project started when she reached out online to find a guitar for her daughter. How cool is that? The little things make all the difference in the world. So stay tuned. Check out the film, Hot Docs world premiere. If you miss it there, I hope you don't miss it there. But if you do, it's going to have a wider release. I'm looking forward to meeting this band and getting autographs, you know, backstage after the world tour. Let's hope that that's happening in the not so distant future. And don't forget davidpecklive.com for more information about my writing and my speaking, and facetofacelive.ca. You can find, oh boy, close to 500, and I think we're close to 560 interviews now. It's kind of getting out of hand, and in a good way. And the popularity of the podcast is growing. Please sign up for our newsletter, leave a review for us on iTunes, forward it to your family and friends, and please, you know, if you can, socially mediate us as much as you possibly can. Facetofacelive.ca for more access, and like I said, a review on iTunes can mean all the difference in the world. But stay tuned for a really fun interview and important interview coming up with Bobby Jo Hart and June Millington, talking about the really fun, interesting, important new film, Fanny, The Right to Rock. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We're joined by two very special guests here with us today. Face to Face live, actually. Well, it's by the time you guys get to it, it won't be so live, but we've got Bobby Jo Hart with us and June Millington here to talk about a new, fascinating new film and a fascinating piece of history. And we're going to get right into it in a second. But thank you to you both for joining me here today on Face to Face.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for having us, Dave.
Bobby Jo, tell us what's the film? Give us a little bit of context. before we step in, world premiere at Hot Docs Film Festival coming up in the not so distant future. Give us a little bit of context around the film, and then I want to get right into it with you both.
Well, I mean, context is that one of the most important bands ever has been written out of history in a lot of ways. And I discovered Fanny serendipitously when I was looking for a guitar for my daughter on this Taylor Guitar website, and they had this section called Stories. And I clicked on it, and up came this photo of this gorgeous woman with this flaming gray hair with this electric guitar that she was holding, and it was June Millington. And below it was this story of this band Fanny. This is about 4 or 5 years ago when I discovered the band, and I was really upset. I was really mad that I didn't know about them. I was mad. My parents had LPs everywhere in the 70s when I was growing up, and we were listening to so many amazing bands at the time, and bands that Fanny toured with, bands that Fanny jammed with back in the day. But where were they on my parents' turntable? And so, like all the films that I end up just passionately wanting to make, I just felt like, okay, people need to know about this band, this amazing, amazing band. So that's the initial context. And then things rolled from there.
Well, listen, I got to tell you both, I absolutely love the film, and I'm sure it's going to find a huge audience. I mean, it's so much fun. Can I say it's a road movie? It feels like a road movie. I felt like I was on tour a little bit. It really was cool. The images backstage, and anyway, I wanted to say that it was a lot of fun, and I think a fascinating step back into some not so pleasant parts of our history, actually, which I'm sure we're going to get into as well. June, how do you feel being called one of the most important rock bands in American history by David Bowie and by so many others?
Well, he's absolutely right. So I feel great about it. I don't feel like I'm overblowing it one single bit because we were the first all women or all female band to sign to a major label and record albums. So we did 4 albums, 4 complete albums, which started to be released in 1970. And we worked so hard. We really were a great band. And we were actually on pretty much every single national show that you can think of, including the Kenny Loggins show, which we flew up to Canada to do. And that was right after we played the Tonight Show, and that was right after we played Fillmore East in New York. And in between that, we played on the Sonny and Cher show. We played Fillmore West. We played with everybody, really. And how people could not have heard about Fanny is still kind of beyond me because not only were we everywhere, we played on all the major TV shows. We recorded it at Apple, the Beatles studio. Their offices were right above the studio with Jeff Emmerich, who was their recording engineer, and he loved working with us. How could you not have heard of us? But apparently a lot of people didn't, and they're writing in now to complain about that very fact. So to get back to your question, David was absolutely right. He was a huge fan.
Yeah, he sure sounds like he was a huge fan. Well, I think what's really beautiful about who you've I would love to hear who wasn't able to make it into the film, Bobby Joe, but you've got quite a group of people, quite an eclectic group of people from Fanny's past that have spoken about them as influences and just, I was going to say the splash, but that's not the right word at all, but the influence, the impact that Fanny had on the B-52s, on Bonnie Raitt, I love the fact that Joe Cocker was sitting at your dining room table. I mean, it's just like, wow, you guys were everywhere. And yet, as I think right out of the gate, Bobby Joe, you tell us this wasn't a man's game, but Fanny was here to prove otherwise.
Absolutely. I mean, I think June can speak to this better than I can. She was living it, in flesh and blood back in the day, right, June?
Yeah, I mean, when we first got to Hollywood, it was May of May of '69, and we had been in a couple of, kind of teenage all-girl bands since '65, Gene and myself, with different girls. And by the time we got to LA and Hollywood in '69, we were a well-seasoned band. See, here's the thing that people may not realize: we were a self self-formed, self-contained band. Okay, a lot of other all-girl bands were put together actually by guys who had this idea. In fact, I remember when Kim Fowley ran up backstage at the Whiskey A Go Go and said to me, June, I got it. I'm going to form a band just like you guys, all girls, but they're going to make a lot of money. He made that distinction, but they're
Right.
going to make a lot of money. And maybe he was right, but he did make that distinction, and everybody knew who we were. I mean, even the 13th Street. What is it? I can't forget the name. But I mean, for example, the guitar that I have now, my '57 Les Paul, that was owned by the replacement guitar player in Steppenwolf. So that guitar, played Steppenwolf hits. For example, we played with the Staples singers. We played with Dr. John, the Night Tripper. You know, um, we played just about with. We played with Papa John Creech. We played with the Meters. I mean, we played with. We didn't play with the Rolling Stones, and we didn't play with the Beatles. I guess those would be the two bands that. Oh, and the Who, but we met them. Oh, I mean, we met everyone. But what I'm saying is that we made our mark. We definitely made our mark. And before he passed away, our road manager, Mark Hammerman, said to me, Jim, do you realize that wherever you played, the band that you were opening up for, of course, we were always opening up for the other band, right? They would be lining up the side of the stage just watching you open mouthed. And I said, no, I didn't know that because I mean, I was working, right? I could not have an off night. I always had to play my best. But the very first big gig we did was opening for the Kinks at the Santa Monica Civic. Now
Well,
that's I mean, we played with everyone.
I was struck by how Bobby Joe, you included that a couple times, I think, in the film where people would say things like, "I was it Jeff Baxter from Steely Dan who introduced you and said he had to sort of turn around and look back at the stage. Who did I just introduce? You know, like what's going on stage, right? I thought they were an all girl band, right? Like there was some sort of negative connotation or something, but was blown away by the sound. I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, he's referring to different moments. There was the interview where we were together with Jeff Skunk Baxter in Anaheim, June, and then when he introduced you guys at the She Rocks Awards, that's
Yep.
when we have a clip from that in the film where he mentions that anecdote of turning around and going off after their sound check and like who the hell is that?
Yeah,
Like that's
what's going on?
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean there's just everyone had such amazingly positive and transformative things to say about the band, including Joe Elliott, lead singer of Def Leppard. I mean,
Yeah, I
the
would
guy
say
still
Joe's a
has
fan.
his
I would say
flexi
Joe's a fan.
disc. He still has his flexi disc,
I know that's a great shot. The is that the 45?
yeah, that
Yeah,
he
wonderful moment.
literally has saved it. And when he was describing putting on that 45 and on and on one side was the Rolling Stones, the other side was Blind Alley by Fanny, and the way he broke down how that song starts, and you'll see, June, and it's like when he was breaking it down in the interview, I'm just like, okay, man, we've got to use that because it was just so visceral. You just felt like you were there with him.
Yeah.
And it was just, yeah, it was such a privilege to be hearing all these stories from different people, and a privilege especially to spend time with June and bandmates.
June, I think it's Bree who says in the film that at some point, and I don't know if it was sort of the reunion or when it was, but she was with her family again. Do you feel, I mean, it looks like you're sitting in a studio there. Are you really only at home when you're on stage, when you've got that 57 Les Paul in your hands? Is that really when you're at home?
I mean, I can't say that it's the only time I'm at home, but I can say for sure it's the only time I disappear.
Right.
You know, there's that actual place where you are into the thing, into all the vibrations, into the main vibe, and you literally disappear. And, you know, for me, that's the home plate moment. You don't remember it, and yet it feels so good. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's the moment you're always looking for. I mean, it's kind of like being a drug addict, you know, you want that first hit. What
Right.
was that first hit when you disappeared? Oh, it felt so good. I want that again.
Yeah, there's something about finding a place where you're embraced, where you're included, you know, where you kind of feel enveloped, right? And I kind of thought that's sort of what Brie was getting at, you know. I'm with my family, and I mean, I've spent a bit of time on stage. I
Mhm.
enjoy it, but I don't get quite the sense. Bonnie Ray talked about, I think it was the attitude that you guys had. You just sort of, you stepped into it. It just came so easily, right? I think that's a really interesting
But
creative
one thing,
thing. I'd love to hear more about that.
yeah, one thing would be great to point out is that before Fanny came on the scene, which we weren't even called Fanny when we signed the contract in '69, we were Wild Honey. We became Fanny in 1970. But so from '65 to '69, literally, it's kind of hard to describe it, but we had no role models. I know it's hard. People say, well, you know, what was it like back then? I mean, as if 19, even, let's say 60, 60, 67 is like 2020, 21. There is absolutely no place where we overlap with those years because we had no role models.
Mm,
So finally, what we had to do was create our own frame. Imagine a picture frame, but there's nothing in it. You know, there's nothing in it. So we couldn't see a reflection of ourselves. Certainly nobody else. I mean, what, the Supremes? I don't think so. I mean, they were great, but come on, you know, Martha and the Vandellas, come and get these memories. No, they were not playing their own instruments, right? So what happened was finally we had to step into the frame and become the role models. And that wasn't so easy. You know, it was little by little. How do we do it? We worked every day. I mean, Jean and I got really great grades, you know, B plus, A plus. But we were sneaking out at night and going to the other girls' houses. And I mean, literally, we jumped out of our bedroom window and drove to the next suburb over
I
to
loved
rehearse
I
with the
love the
other two
line.
girls in the middle of the night.
I love the line of sorority with electric guitars. That's awesome.
And yeah, and you cannot mess with that. You cannot mess with that. It's so powerful. People don't realize how powerful it is when girls get together, let's say from age 14, 15, 16, 17 on, and create a band. That is, you know, it's like almost like making a baby. You know, it's one of the most powerful forces in the universe. I can't say that, you know, we're literally in utero, but it's very similar because you are creating yourself. So when I say that we stepped into the frame, I'm saying that that was really powerful. It took a few years, but all of a sudden we realized, hey, that's us. We recognize ourselves in the frame. And now with Bobby Joe's film, people are starting to get an idea that we actually did exist. Look how long it took for society to catch up with us. You know, that was the problem. People just couldn't take it. They just could not take that we were girls. And I've actually had people write and say, you know, I'm so sorry. I saw you at the whiskey when I was a teenager, boys, but we couldn't admit you were better than us, so we put you down. You know,
Wow.
so that kind of thing happened. And okay, it's nice that you're apologizing now, but make that times 100,000. You know, make that times however many people just could not take it. On the other hand, there's at least 1,000 people who know exactly where they were standing when they first saw or heard Fanny. You know, I had this guy who wrote to me, said, you know, the first day I went to work, I think in England someplace, at a record store, I was on acid. You guys came on and I just lost it. You know, so there are a lot of those moments as well, but not enough to overcome the fact that people could not take what they saw in that frame. They couldn't take it. You know, they would put us down and say, oh, they're okay, or they're derivative. Boy, do I hate that. Derivative.
Mm.
You know, so the put downs come in so many different ways.
June, I love your passion. You talk about your determination in the film as well. And do you think, you know, becoming the role models? I think that's a really interesting comment. You
Mhm.
talk about writing intelligent rock music, and I thought that was
Mhm.
awesome as well, and really interesting.
Mhm.
About did you feel that you had a bit of a responsibility, you know, amongst all the sorority like craziness and the rock and roll craziness? Did you feel that you still had a bit of a responsibility as writers, as artists, as performers and entertainers?
Yeah. Well, the short answer to that is yes. The long answer to that is I've always been an intellectual who was interested in poetry and, you know, uh, different kinds of music. So when I wrote Think About the Children, for example, I wasn't preaching to people. That was actually something that I felt deeply. You know, are you ready to think about the children, to think about somebody else? You know, for a 20 or 21-year-old girl to say that in 19, well, we recorded that at Apple, so 1971, that was a big deal.
Mm,
And now people are definitely catching up to that. And I'm so proud of that song. But, you know, as compared to what the girls and the next bands were singing about, you know, in terms of the theme, you can't even compare them. Apples and oranges, they don't mix. And I'm proud of my songs. I'm proud of our songs. We definitely had something to say, but we didn't talk about, oh, we have something to say.
right.
We wrote about what interested us and what was moving our hearts and our spirits, our passions. We were very much in an orb. You could call it the Fanny orb. I mean, you really could.
The Fanny orb. I don't think that comes up in the film, does it, Bobby Joe?
I don't
Let's
think
make
that those exact I don't think those exact words were used, but I think you just feel the orb.
You
You
do.
see it and you feel it. It's
It's
so
true.
omnipresent.
It's
yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
that could be the, like, maybe that's going to be a
Yeah,
fan
take that
based
orb
film.
and rub it, you know.
Bobby Joe, so you're looking for a guitar for
It'll
your
replace the
daughter.
Christmas.
So you're looking for a guitar for your daughter. What kind of pulled you in when you first started learning a bit more about Fanny? What was it that grabbed you? Was it the lyrics? Was it the music? Was it just sort of that, wow, no one has heard of these guys. I want to change that. I want to tell this story.
Well, I mean, the first thing that pulled me in when I was on that guitar website looking for a guitar for my daughter, you know, and like I mentioned earlier, on the website was a section called stories. And so I clicked on that. And the first thing that grabbed me was this woman with this flaming gray hair that was just rocking out. She wasn't even necessarily rocking out. It was just, she was rock. She rock and roll was just oozing from her, you know? I mean, rock was lucky to have her.
Right. It's great.
She just had this flaming hair, this electric guitar, and I was mesmerized, I have to say.
There was a real presence there.
Yeah, it was like, it was like a deity. It was like seeing, you know, just like, it was, I was blown away, like, okay, my God, okay, yes, there's other women that I've seen in rock and roll, but I had not seen this woman before personally. And then when I started reading about Fanny and David Bowie, I mean, he's been, you know, as you mentioned earlier, like so vocal about the band, then just all, and then when I just started looking up the songs, you know, or on YouTube, or and playing what I could get my hands on or my ear on, the lyrics, you know, they're so deep, they're so affecting, and the, you know, their musicianship is so incredible. I mean, I'm a child of 80s rock and roll. That's when I was in high school, you know, when Joe Elliott and Def Leppard were out. I mean, I was a
Sure.
huge Def Leppard fan, man.
Sure. Same.
And AC/DC, and, you know,
Bringing
and
on the
Joan
heartbreak.
Jett, and I could just, you know, Pat Benatar, like these different women that, you know, and men in the 80s. But I had the honor to be able to rediscover a band that I should have known about, you know, and lots that, as Jim was saying earlier, lots of people do know about Fanny. There's a fan base that is incredible. I mean, if you go to YouTube, there's like, you know, hundreds of thousands of clicks on some of these videos.
Absolutely.
And the fans that are writing, or just writing below the YouTube trailer of the film, you know, it's just like, it's about time. They should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like,
absolutely.
I was at this place and saw you at this date at this, you know, venue. And I mean, it's so for me, I mean, that was the moment I was drawn in by that photo. But then, as I said, you know, the musicianship, the rocking vibe, you know, it just, I love rock and roll from what I grew up with, and it just grabbed me. It grabbed me, and it wouldn't let go.
Yeah, that's cool. That's amazing. Well, there is something about that presence for sure. You know, June, I don't know how to say this. There's a rebellious side to rock and roll, obviously. There's a sense of your passion comes through in the interview here today, and it certainly comes through in your music. And the sexism, the prejudice, the racism that you had to deal with along the way, were you I don't know, were you rebellious before all of that? And maybe rebellious is not the right word. Maybe that's not even fair. Were you just the type of person to step into it and to say, you know what? No, I'm pushing back against this. And we're going to step into this, and we're not giving up.
No, not at all. I was a nice Filipina girl who just wanted to make a few friends. I mean, that was it. If I could make a few friends, people who would talk to me, you know, when I wrote my first song that we ever performed in junior high at the variety show, and it was called Miss Wallflower 62. I mean, that says it all.
That sounds like a Bob Dylan song. That's great.
Exactly. But kids whom I didn't know and who never gave me a second look, I'd be walking to a hall, they'd go, oh, I really like that song, and then just keep walking. And I thought, oh my God, did they just talk to me? You know, it was shocking, and it was liberating. It liberated something in me, and it gave me the knowledge that music was a thing. Music, actually, you referred to home before. Music actually was the home.
Yeah, it's good.
Music
Love
was
it.
the home plate that everybody could relate to. Nobody can escape music. If you love a piece of music, if you love a guitar riff, anything that you hear that you'd like to sing when you wake up in the morning, you can't escape it. It's in your heart, it's in your DNA, it's part of you. So that put me in touch with everything. You know, I was not a rebel. Are you kidding? However, as I started, or as we started to, and this is in my book, Land of a Thousand Bridges, as we started to really come up against, and I'll say the word misogyny because that is actually what the biggest thing that came up. And in the book, I talk about our band, the Svelts, playing at a teen center. And by the way, I remember when teen centers started. There was a point in time where there were no teen centers. There were just like high school gigs, fraternity gigs, and Vietnam War gigs. Like you'd play the Officers Club. That was much. Then you had, oh my gosh, you had teen clubs. A lot more gigs opened up, you know. And that was really important to us. And once we started to play at these little teen clubs, I remember one time we're wearing our matching outfits. We all had, like, the pink velour tops and the purple skirts and the pink shoes. And this one particular boy kept following me around, trying. He was looking up my skirt, and he was egging the guys by him to look up my skirt. They just figured they could get away with it. After a couple of moves where I moved to the right or I just kicked him in the face with my high heels.
Nice.
And that was the end
Good
of that.
for
And I realized,
you.
oh, I didn't say a word. But what took the place of that as I got older? So let's say I was 15, 16 then. By the time I got to 22, 23, 24, I just turned up and got better. That's it. That was my rebellion. I'm better than you, MF. I was talking to Earl Slick. You probably the guitar player with David Bowie and John Lennon. He's here right now, and we were sitting out in the sun talking. And we were talking about how it doesn't really matter, what you say. Just do it. Just do it and be the best. You don't
So
even have to
good.
be the loudest. But like Bobby Joe mentioned the song "Blind Alley" earlier. When I got to LA in '69, I wasn't even a lead guitar player. I learned how to play lead guitar in a year because I had to. Our lead guitar player now, but I didn't know how to get that tone on "Blind Alley." It was people like Lowell George and Skunk Baxter and Elliot Randall. We were all creating what we now call classic rock guitar sounds. We were creating them back then. See what I'm talking about? So you literally cannot cause these years to overlap because there are certain things that didn't exist back then. They were birthing themselves.
Yeah, it's good. You around the point. There's a point in the film. I hope this is okay, Bobby Joe. It's not really. I don't think I'm tipping too much here, but there's a point where you talk about being involved in kids programs, and I'm back to that whole role model thing. And I think you say something like, and it really stuck with me. You need, and you were just talking about stepping in. An attitude of singing out, I think, was your phrase, June. An attitude of singing out, and to me, that was like, oh, we could build a campaign around that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, is that what you mean about that? Like, that's just be intentional, show up.
Well, I think what Bobby Joe is saying when she saw that photograph of me, of course that was a photo. You couldn't hear me play, you couldn't
Right.
hear me sing or say anything, but my attitude was emanating. And I think that's what you're referring to. That's at the center of it all. That speaks the loudest, really.
Yeah, it's good. But hey, Bobby Joe, when you stepped into making this film, did you have a sense that you were going to make a film that would be so timely as well as just fun and interesting and important in a historical way, but also timely from speaking into racism, speaking into that whole sexism piece of it? Was that on your mind?
Well, I mean, it's always on girls and women's minds because we live it, whether it's Me Too or Stop Asian Hate, or, there's women have been battling for, a safe place in society for centuries. And so, I mean, just the title of the film, Fanny, the Right to Rock, that to me, like, we're standing on the shoulders, June and I and my 16-year-old daughter and girls and women everywhere. We're standing on the shoulders of women who fought and bled for women to have the right to vote, and that 100th anniversary just recently passed. And so to me, Fanny, all girls, women that have, followed in the footsteps of Fanny, Fanny literally fought and bled and kicked butt to fight for the right to rock, and they helped give a lot of the bands that are in the film that followed them, whether it's the Runaways, or B-52s or the Go-Go's, like the the women that spoke in the film about Fanny, recognize that they're standing on Fanny's shoulders, that they, and so, and June is playing it, as she says, playing it forward, at
Good.
IMA, the Institute for the Musical Arts, where my own daughter has been at their rock camps, and they're amazing. And I mean, I call it kind of, it's not underground, but it kind of is, because as Bonnie Raitt says in the film, they were doing girls rock camps long before anybody else thought about it. So,
So great, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Playing It Forward should be the name of the world tour, June, that you're going to be going on in the near future.
Sounds good to me. I'm all for it.
So hey, we're probably going to wrap it up soon, but I do have a couple more questions I'd love to ask you. Are you going on tour in anytime soon?
Well, I don't have any particular plans, but I'm certainly open to it. The world is in such a crazy place right now that it's difficult for anyone to make any plans. All I can say is I'm open to it. It would be great because I love to play.
When was the last time you were playing a few riffs on that Les Paul?
Probably 2 months ago. I actually wrote a couple of songs, three songs in late January after the inauguration. It was like the top of my head blew off. And one of the songs actually that I wrote is Girls Don't Dream, parentheses, The Lie. And I feel really strongly about that particular song, Girls Don't Dream. And I really am putting it out there. Of course, I'm refuting it. But the
Right.
fact that we really were not even allowed to dream is a big deal. And people may not realize that that was not so long ago.
It's really not so long ago. You're absolutely right. This is what I so love about the film. I love that about you and the band, and how you push back, and how you stuck it out. That you had the determination to go there. Um, um,
I just wanted to jump
yeah,
in and
go.
say something real quick, is that you were asking June about, going on tour, but there is a special event that people can be part of and watch and step into on May 5th. There's Fanny is doing their bandmates are doing a pocket concert with some really amazing special guests, and June has orchestrated this whole, one of the songs that she wrote, one and has orchestrated this amazing collaborations within that. So I highly recommend that people, if they go to Hot Docs website, and it's May 5th pocket concert, you can actually buy a ticket for that specific event. And people around the world, across Canada, around the world, can tune into that. And I also want to mention that when you're asking about June's riffs, the opening riff in the film is a June Millington original riff that she actually recorded when we were in post-production. She recorded a lot of amazing riffs that we used in varied places in the film, which was such a fun collaboration that I enjoyed, and our and Danielle Toussaint, who did our sound mix and some original music vibe as well. But that opening riff is June Millington.
It's cool.
FYI.
That's so awesome, Bobby Joe. I got to say, I love the last shot too of the film. By the way, get that bird's eye view shot of the car with these women, they're very Thelma and Louise. It's awesome. Hey June, just as we wrap up, I think it was you who said that the metaphor of rocking was something like having the fearlessness to try. Can you just chat a tiny bit about that, as to this idea of dreaming and I don't know, young women of the future? My daughter's 13. I mean, there's so much she could take from a film like this as well, from your story, the stuff that you guys had to deal with and went through.
Mm-hmm. Well, you could say it's a metaphor, but it's actually not. It's real. Because having the courage to dream and move towards actualizing your dream. And when someone causes you to stumble, or you lose your own, your own sort of inner compass, and you keep going, this is what we teach at our rock and roll girls camps. That you pick yourself up, you keep going because there's always the next thought, the next dream, the next moment, the next success. Do not worry about your little, I failed. Girls, I think, kind of, think about that too much. Think about your next success because it is a second away. Your next thought is a success. And I really believe in that. This is not a metaphor. This is for real. So I believe that rock and roll is a place where you can put your hat on a hook or whatever that says courage. Courage. Just have the courage. And then the next thing could be believe. And then, whatever your words are that give you the gift of the next moment. And it is always there.
Wow, it's great. Who would have thought such great advice would come from a rock and roll musician? This is wonderful news. And listen, I'm looking forward to getting your autograph backstage in the not so distant future. I hope that's happening. I don't know, later this year, early next year. I'm deadly serious, June. It's been a super ridiculous pleasure having you guys on the show. Thank you so much. World premiere Fanny coming up at Hot Docs. It's going to hopefully be available for the world to see in the not so distant future. Bobby Joe, thank you for joining me here today on Face to Face. June Millington, what a pleasure having you here with me chatting about Fanny and so many other things.